Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasts.
Today, snowboarding is a global phenomenon, an Olympic sport, a lifestyle, and a creative expression that spans generations. But it wasn't always this way. Before the big air competitions, the video parts, and the high-tech gear, snowboarding was a frontier, raw, uncertain, and searching for identity. And at the heart of the evolution stood one rider whose influence still echoes across every mountain. He wasn't just a pioneer, he was a blueprint, a four-time world champion and one of the sport's earliest icons. He helped define what style could look like on the snow, what freedom could feel like on a board, and what it meant to approach the mountain with equal parts mastery and humility. He pushed boundaries, not for fame, but for the pure joy of riding. And in doing so, he shaped the DNA of modern snowboarding. But it would be his love for the mountains, his love for the snow, and his love for the board that ultimately got him killed. Welcome back to Tragedy with a View. Hello, I am your host, Kayla, and welcome back, and happy Thanksgiving or almost Thanksgiving to those of us who celebrate. Thank you for being here and giving me an outlet for things that I want to talk about. I am going to ask everyone, I don't care when you're listening to this episode, send me a message, an email, or if you listen on Spotify, you can leave a comment. I just want to hear one. If you have more than one, I'm happy to hear one thing you are really grateful for from this past year. And I myself have quite a few really good opportunities present themselves. And I am really grateful for the fact that I live a life that allows me to see these doors open and that I'm willing to take a chance and walk through them. You know, sometimes am I fearful of trying new things? Yes, but does that mean that I'm going to not try that new thing? No, not always. It's not that I'm not scared. It's just that I'm willing to do it anyways. Anyways, I want to hear from you. I'm excited to hear from you. I want to hear from you. Please let me know what you are most thankful for, or if there's something that you're really looking forward to. I would love to hear that as well. But we're going to get into this episode now. Of the most influential people in the history of snowboarding, that list would not be complete without the name Craig Kelly. Born in Mount Vernon, Washington on April 1st, 1966, Craig began snowboarding before snowboarding was cool, or even a commonly known thing. He grew up nestled in the Cascade Mountains on the Pacific Coast side, and this environment nurtured mountain sports in many, many children who grew up there. They were surrounded by the incredible peaks, the tall mountains, deep forest, and never-ending coastline. These kids thrived on the outdoors and took up any activity they could to keep them there. And this is exactly what gave Craig the exposure that he needed when a friend handed him a snowboard and said, "Give it a try." Craig was pretty immediately hooked, and it would be this board that would shape the rest of his life. Craig was curious and independent and extremely athletic. He was pulled towards both skateboarding and surfing, so it is no surprise that once he got his hands on a snowboard, he fell in love with the sport too. As an early teen, just as he was growing into his own self, snowboarding was growing into itself, just not quite as fast. Mount Baker is home to one of the first areas that snowboarding became popular, which is also home to Craig. It was Mount Baker where he learned what all snowboarding could do. He seemed to glide down the slopes filled with thick, powdery snow, and the challenging terrain only added to his curiosity and eagerness to learn all that he could on a board. But snowboarding was not readily accepted. This kind of reminds me of the movie, I think it's called Johnny Tsunami, and I also could be wrong, but I think it was on the Disney Channel that was kind of like the clash of snowboarders and skiers. And there was like this ego, like who's better, or like I'm better because I'm on skis. And the snowboarders were like, no, I'm better because I don't need to. I don't remember a whole lot of the specifics of the movie, but I'm willing to bet that they were not very far off of the dynamic between real life introduction of snowboarding into the skiing scene. Though the popularity of snowboarding was slow to grow, Craig was fast to pursue it. Immediately after graduating high school, Craig went to the University of Washington for a chemical engineering major, but he didn't last long, deciding to pursue snowboarding full-time, and he was good at it. He was smooth and fluid in competition. He was determined and would spend hours and hours climbing a slope over and over again so that way he could practice one piece of his routine. He wanted to perfect it, to have it so ingrained in how he moved and what he did that he would no longer need to think about it. During his professional time, he would win 4 world championships, 3 United States championships, and many, many other awards. But his career was not all sunshine and rainbows. As the sport grew, talented people from all over the world stepped up and challenged him, though many of them did not see it that way. Instead, they would watch the lean-faced, dark-haired man with the easy smile sail past and excitedly exclaim, "That's Craig Kelly."
Autumn's Oddities is a strange and unusual podcast made by The Strange and Unusual, me, Autumn Gruby. Each week, I'll be taking you through some of the creepiest cases true crime has to offer. It won't only be true crime, I'll also be covering cryptids, haunted places, haunted things, and the true stories that inspired horror movies. Listen every Monday and Friday for new episodes, and remember, if it's creepy and weird, you'll find it here.
Though it would be a lie if I claimed that this was the only hiccup he ran into. In the early years of boards, Vision Sports, the parent company of Sims Snowboards, noticed Craig and signed him on as one of their first team riders. This was a huge thing for Craig and Sims alike. This was in the mid-1980s, and as Craig was able to travel more and compete more, he experimented with the different types of events. Slalom racing, where you travel down a slope navigating in and out of flagged areas or gates and are forced to make tight turns at high speeds. Halfpipe, where points are awarded for the best performed tricks and acrobats while riding up and down the U-shaped structure made of snow. And then there was freestyle, where you could make up your own routine while using downhill ramps, jumps, and the halfpipe alike. It didn't matter which event Craig played into, he was good at them all. His skill didn't just give him championships. He also used it in some of the very first snowboarding films, and this helped to bring snowboarding to the public. It showed them a new sport and inspired them to give it a try, which increased its popularity exponentially. But even as he was winning, he didn't view snowboarding as a means to an end. He wanted to explore the sport, see what he could accomplish, and then, when competing no longer had anything to offer, he stepped away in the early 1990s. But that maybe also could have been from a lawsuit that he had to fight in the late 80s. When he switched from Sims boards to Burton snowboards after Burton Boards founder Jake Burton Carpenter caught wind of Craig and decided to see what sort of offer he could make to entice Craig to switch to him, this was early in Burton Boards' business, and when Jake offered more opportunities, especially when it came to creating his own board, Craig was eager to sign with Burton. But Craig had signed a contract with Sims, and when they sued Craig, initially the court sided with Sims. Yet, when the appeal came down the line, the court clarified how contracts between companies and athletes needed to work, essentially allowing snowboarding athletes to have a little bit more freedom in the sport. And it was this partnership between Craig and Burton Boards that allowed the snowboard to become what we see it today. But as Craig stepped away from competition, he started to explore more of the backcountry. He looked for the terrain that hadn't yet had a board glide down its slopes. And again, this influenced many people to be a little bit more connected with nature instead of focusing on competing and winning. And as Craig did this, he found himself more and more enthralled by the idea of being a mountain guide. So he would be guiding ski and board trips. This would require him to learn not only snow, but also the terrain and the way it interacts with each other and how to safely get people of all skill levels from point A to point B. And this next phase of life excited him, though he would be in for the fight of his life. Going through the Association of Canadian Mountain Guides, or ACMG, he would not only be learning about guiding, but also mountain rescue as a profession. The course taught him how to read the terrain, learn snowpack patterns, and how to assess the pack and the snow for avalanche risks. He learned how to navigate different types of terrain, first aid, and safety techniques. He learned avalanche rescue methods and how to respond to avalanches in different situations, and how to teach those skills to others. To say this course is rigorous is an understatement, and that is exactly what Craig was looking for. But there was one big problem with this course. They were ski and mountaineering, not snowboarding. So Craig was not allowed to take the test or the coursework on a snowboard. And this was because they were so focused on the skiing part of this that they didn't cater to snowboarders, excluding them as clients completely. At the time, the ski guide exam had to be done on skis. There was no snowboard exam option. It wasn't necessarily because they didn't think snowboarding wasn't legit, or at least that was the way their opinion was portrayed, but they did seem to have an air of culture that made things feel like you couldn't be a professional guide on anything other than skis. But Craig pushed back on this. There were responses of that they didn't have any snowboarders and that skiing was easier because you could travel more easily on flat and uphill, which there's a point there, but there was also a safety concern that in the event that somebody would need to be removed from the mountain or moved to a safer place, snowboards would not allow this to happen as easily due to constantly having to unstrap from the single board. Not to mention at the time, snowboards were quite heavy in comparison to what we see today. While the decisions were being looked at from the technical side of things, ACMG was slow to accept change. It wasn't until split boards came onto the scene that they finally changed their ways. But for now, Craig would need to take the test on skis. So he set to learning how to glide through the snow on skis. It wasn't until 2014 that ACMG finally opened the course to snowboards, which we are in the 90s here, so there's some time. In the end, it was technology, better gear, more demand for snowboard options, clients demanding snowboards, and pressure from technical committees for mountain guiding that finally kind of forced their hand into fully embracing snowboards. Once Craig was in the program, as he has already demonstrated, he was fully committed. Despite having a wife and daughter at home, though his wife and daughter joined him in adventures every chance they had to get away together. But this was not possible for one of the mountain guide courses that Craig took located at the Durrand Glacier Chalet in Revelstoke, British Columbia. The chalet is located at 1,946 meters or 6,384 feet in elevation along the tree line in the Selkirk Mountains. The only way to get here is to fly by helicopter, and it is very remote and very rugged terrain. With glacial peaks and alpine terrain, the chalet is a comfortable stay, but when staying here, you are in the backcountry. You can only get so comfortable. The chalet was built in 1985 by Rudy Beglinger, who was a Swiss mountain guide, and he used it as a base for his Selkirk mountain experience. He wanted to have comfortable amenities along with the alpine and rough mountain terrain, and this chalet was the perfect way for him to mix those two things together. The chalet is located on a ridge with views that would stun anyone. No matter the direction you look, you are secluded in the mountains. It is almost unbelievable that this is real. According to Ski Canada magazine, it is, quote, long rolling glacier descents, plunging couloirs, steep grades, and the kind of ski mountaineering terrain that would be hard to improve on. There's bedrooms, hot showers, indoor plumbing, a sauna, and a drying room for all of your gear. There is wireless internet, a satellite phone, and full meals. This is a place where I want to go, not even to ski or adventure, but just to be at peace in nature. In the winter, there is skiing, whether that be on tour, mountaineering, downhill skiing, down 3 run options, or exploring the 10 glaciers and 21 peaks surrounding the chalet. The snow during this time of year is deep and accumulating, meaning that day to day could bring you different conditions and different challenges. In the summer, there are 80 to 90 kilometers or 50 to 56 miles of trails to travel that take you through the mountains, into meadows, onto glaciers, and viewing the incredible wildlife here. The chalet has 2 hubs called the Mount Moloch Chalet and the Empire Lake Chalet, which you can bounce from one to the other for a more adventurous and extended trip. Because the chalet is so hard to reach, everything is planned for ahead of time, and this means it is expensive. But none of this slowed Craig down. He was excited and ready to go. It was late January that this course was taking place, and on January 20th, 2003, as the group of 24 split into 2 groups, one of 11 people and one of 13, they set off for a few different locations and runs. The guides who were with these 2 groups seemed to have some, I'll call it a personality difference, which caused a communication issue. It's like one of those things where one person thinks that they are being super direct and super clear, but the directness is saying we go left rather than you're going to go past this rock that looks like a chair and then go left. So that was an example, not related to the story. It's just how clarity can become a question. The first group was being led by Rudy, the Selkirk Mountain Experience owner, and the second group was being led by a different guide, which was Ken Wiley. It was as this communication style became confusing that the second group stopped to recalibrate how to handle the slope. Craig was in this group, and there were a couple of members who were not faring quite as well as others at this point, and they decided to pause so that way they could give those who needed a rest some extra time, as well as prepare for the downhill part of this excursion. As they climbed or moved uphill, they wore skins on their skis that allowed for some extra traction. So during the downhill parts, they would need to remove those skins so that way they would be able to glide down the slope. So they use this time to rest and remove their skins. So this group of 13 that head out first, and they are making their way along with the second group of 11 several hundred yards behind them. They were in the backcountry learning how to navigate and read the terrain instead of following the established ski runs. As they were making their way up the slope, they were kind of switchbacking back and forth as they went. And so at one point, the first group, the group of 13, was actually not ahead, or the second group wasn't behind the first group. They were above and below each other. As they were making their way up the slope, the leading group was near the ridge when a crack rang out through the air, followed by a jolt, almost a settling of the snow beneath them. In the days prior to this, heavy snow had been falling from the sky, which then gave way to a warmer day than usual. And when the wind whipped across the ridge, coupled with the weight from the people sliding along the surface, the layers compacted, separated, and then roared down the slope. The avalanche was a huge slab-style avalanche where a large 100-meter wide and 1 meter deep, or 328 feet wide and 3 feet deep section of snow gave way and traveled 300 meters, or nearly 1,000 feet down the slope. With a 30 to 45 degree slope, this glacier was perfect for fast movement, whether that be people skiing down or snow from the avalanche. During its descent, it caught the lower group in its grasp, capturing 11 people within the snow. It was moving so fast that they had no idea it was coming until it was already on them. The first group immediately responded and put all of their training to work. They were, after all, either trained or learning how to respond to avalanches and how to manage rescue efforts. They just hadn't been expecting to be attempting a real-life miracle during their own training session. Once in the runout area, they found that the snow was deep and solid, making rescue efforts complicated at best. As we have discussed before, avalanche snow is not like snow where we make snowmen with. As the snow separates and starts to descend, it begins to warm up as the particles rub against each other, keeping it cool enough to maintain its snow-like properties, but warm enough to allow it to move like water. This water-like snow, as it comes to a stop, will fill any space and gap, including up the nostrils and into mouths should someone have their mouth open. The snow then cools rapidly, setting like concrete and becoming so hard that fingers can barely twitch, and in extreme cases, a person can't even blink their eyes. In the weeks before January 20th, the area had seen frequent avalanches, slab avalanches, which indicates that there were weaker layers of snow beneath the dense, strong layers that were holding on top, meaning that when the weaker layers released, everything on top went with it. When the second group was picked up, they were subsequently buried beneath 3 to 4 meters, or 10 to 13 feet of snow. Rudy Beglinger grabbed his radio as his group made their way down to the runout site, and he yelled through it, "It's huge. Everybody's down. We need all the help there is. Nobody on standby. Everybody's coming up here. Selkirk Tangingers, CMH, Department of Highway, Avalanche Dog Masters, paramedics, and everything you can find. Bring it up." As he is talking on the radio to coordinate these rescue efforts to come to them, he has his other hand on his avalanche beacon, looking for anyone beneath the snow. And very, very fast breakdown of how avalanche beacons work is that there's a switch where you can have it on either sending or receiving. So when you are out and about and doing things, you have it on sending so that the signal will send out and away from you. In the event of an avalanche like this, a person can then take their avalanche beacon and turn it into receiving so that that signal that is being sent will be received by that beacon. And it is as he is talking on the radio, like mid-sentence, he finds a signal. It is John Seibert. John was trapped in the snow, but uninjured. He was easily dug out, and so it went. Evan Westlake was next, and he was found thanks to his ski sticking out of the snow, and he was able to wiggle his foot, causing the ski to move above the surface. Jean-Luc Swendener was next, but he was already dead. Ken Wiley was pulled free of the snow, and while he was barely clinging to life, he survived. Ken was actually so kind of like out of it that his head was lolling to the side, and one of the rescue personnel ended up climbing into the hole, and they slapped Ken as hard as he could, and this is what kind of jolted Ken to consciousness, and he started to breathe on his own at this point. Naomi Heffler was next to be found, her head and chest being cleared first, where Heidi Bieber climbed into the hole to perform CPR, but her efforts would be lost. Heidi would perform CPR again on Dave Finnerty, but he too was too far gone to be brought back to life. And again, CPR was performed on Vern Lunsford, where he was found buried under a block of ice, but he too was already gone. Dennis Yates and Kathleen Kessler were next to be found, and these Again, attempts to bring them back to life were unsuccessful. And last to be uncovered was Craig Kelly. In the end, 7 died. And while many of these events and circumstances and specifics are unknown, they don't make a difference to the lives that were lost. We don't know who was leading the second group, as some say Ken Wiley was, and other sources say that Craig himself was leading the group. We don't know who was in the course and how each of them responded, as very few of those who lived have talked about the events. And that's also part of the reason why there's so little information about the actual finding of people and how long it took and what attempts were made. But what we do know is that this is a story that shows that you can have a huge amount of experience on the snow and in the backcountry. You can be a certified mountain guide, and you can have spent your entire life on the snow. You can have never experienced an avalanche before, and still the mountain is dangerous and unpredictable. With the death of 7 kind and talented humans, the world of snowboarding, skiing, and mountaineering was shook and devastated. After his death, Craig was inducted into the U.S. Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame, and Burton set out to honor him with a line called the Craig Kelly Mystery. It is hard to tell what the sport of snowboarding would look like today without Craig's skill and passion for the single boards. His competition was filled with a ride that was more of a choreographed dance, every movement and flair accounted for, and this followed in his desire to guide others into the mountains on his board. He wanted to share his joy, not keep it for himself. It was not about trophies or bragging rights, but laughter and smile and community, and the stubborn desire to do it in his own way. Thank you for listening. We will talk again next week. Bye. What is life without close calls with disaster? Thank you for listening. Don't forget to follow the podcast to be the first to hear the now weekly episodes. Join our subscription on Patreon, Apple, or Spotify today and immerse yourself in the haunting beauty of the great outdoors. For around $4 a month, you'll get exclusive access to the first episode of each month and early access to all other episodes, showcasing the morbid and mysterious side of nature. Please reach out with story requests, and if you have your own story, please email tragedywithaview@gmail.com for a chance to have your story featured on a later episode. Again, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.